am finally happy to welcome you, Carol, to the Leaders Who Care series. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Excited to be here.
I could tell from when we just chatted a little bit before, we're getting into stories before we even started the real thing. So hopefully we'll
Stories
have
before stories.
a lot more. No, it's great to have you here. I'm excited for people to learn more about you and the good stuff that you're doing, and that you really are a leader who cares. We're going to prove it, right? We're going to prove it right now. So, can you briefly share about you? We'll get into the business part soon, but who you are, where you're from originally, where you are now, family, your favorite color,
Sure.
maybe something you've never told anybody else you want to reveal to the world now. I don't know,
Uh,
but stuff like that.
Interesting. All right. So Carol Hansen, I'm the president and CEO of Tatanka Capital and a wholly owned subsidiary, Tatanka Education Services. So that's the business card. I'm a Denver, Colorado native. I really have primarily lived in the Metro Denver area, lived in DC for a short time, now 30 plus years ago. And for those of you that know Colorado, you know that I get to live in a destination resort. One of the things that I really learned over the last 20 years in my own international outreach is how many people from all countries and walks of life have visited Colorado to see our mountains. So that's kind of a cool thing. My favorite color is green. I'll put that out there. And to align with that, because I am a financier, my initials, if you put my maiden name in with my married name, are Cash, Cash. So it just all kind of aligns.
That's very cool. I've never had that happen before.
Grandmother, 3 adult children, 2 granddaughters, and actually in my 40th year of marriage. So have
So you had
stuck it out through the ups and downs.
no kidding. You had your kids when you were 14.
Thank you. Thank you. Pretty young. Yeah. When that first granddaughter came along, I like to tease, does she make me look 10 years younger? So
That's awesome to do that. The boys, girls?
I have 2 girls and a boy, and my daughters, one's an educator and one's a business person, and they're actually both joined me in Tatanka Education. They had no interest in the finance company, and my son is a landscaper. He is a project manager for a landscaping firm. So yeah, a good pack. We got a good pack.
No, and I do love Colorado. I love Colorado Springs. Been there a few times for business, and but also for hockey. And my kids had
Oh yeah,
play some games at the Air Force Academy.
yeah, beautiful setting.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And God's what's that thing they have?
Garden of the Gods.
The Gods is
Yeah,
very cool.
red rock formation, gorgeous. Yeah,
Yeah. So skiing and everything. What more could you ask for, right?
yeah,
So
it's good.
although California, you have that and the beach too.
True, true. I'm a mountain girl, not a what that I like to sit by the pool by the beach. There is another piece that actually everybody who knows me knows that, but now the rest of the world.
There you go, world. You heard it here first. Look out. So, little segue. We're talking about your kids and grandkids. What were you like as a kid and a teenager? Were you a major reader? Were you an organizer? Were you playing music? What were you like then?
One of my regrets I'll share, and you had shared some of the few questions to prompt, and you mentioned music. I played the cello
Whoa.
for several years, and I so regret giving that up. That's on the list of picking it back up at some point. But I think I would say, Mark, that people tell me all the time that as a kid I was in charge. I was sort of the kid on the block who was in charge. I don't think I thought of myself that way per se, but I can, sort of look back through that child's eye and see that I was an organizer, a gatherer of people. I think my one of my primary skills, today that serves me well is I gather people together and can get them moving in the same direction. So yeah, I think I did that. That was there as a kid. And I
Lemonade.
had parents. I guess I'm just going to add, I had parents who definitely told me I'm one of 2 girls that I could grow up to be anything. But they didn't have, the way I describe it is they didn't have in their language to say that I could be the chief surgeon or the superintendent. It was definitely, you can be an astronaut or a doctor, but they didn't have to tell me, I'm a child of the 70s, that I could be in charge of whatever it was I was going to be.
Hmm. That's a
And I
little.
think that's kind of interesting because they were very supportive, but there was that one step that I think we have today.
Yeah, that's a little bit of being educated or way of life at the time, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but good for them for being supportive that you could do anything you wanted to do,
right.
type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I could see you, organizing a lemonade stand at $5 a glass, or
Uh,
something.
the memory that comes to mind actually is I lived on a cul-de-sac, so had neighbors and we could kind of control the street. And I clearly remember organizing a play that we made all the parents come watch and had programs and you know
There you
basically
go.
sit down and shut up and pay attention.
Did you charge?
I don't think I was making money then. No.
Well, that's pretty cool though. I can see it on the end of the cul-de-sac. I played hockey with my kids at the end of a cul-de-sac, and you were putting on plays. So that's, why not? But well, tell us about the beginning of your journey. You started with the University of Colorado. What intrigued? How did that happen? What intrigued you to go down that path, and then led you to the world of financial services and education? How did that happen?
Sure. Again, an interesting thing to reflect on because I was the first in my family to go to a 4-year university. So huge, big deal. And then I probably didn't really share this that much the first 20 years of my career. And now I share it all the time. I'm a college dropout. I don't have my undergraduate degree.
Oh no.
I, and I know, help, don't, I've got that imposter syndrome. Um, and again, when you get a chance to reflect, you can piece together those dots. I went in, I headed off to university at the age of 17, so slightly young, not super young, but on the young end. And I went into the accounting program at business school because I had an uncle that was an accountant. Um, what I learned is that I am not good with details. I need to partner up with somebody who's good at details because that's not me. But I love numbers. I always loved economics, and finance is not accounting. And there's a lot of accounting people who think they're in finance, but they're not there. So it really led to, I think, the first sort of aha. And whenever I'm talking to young people who are tasked with this, what do you want to be when you grow up? I find what's most important is start to figure out what you don't want to be. Eliminate stuff. I can completely eliminate entire sections of accounting. And so that's usually what I share with younger people or people who are still trying to figure it out. Stop worrying about who. I would never have known that my job existed at that time and at that age. Um, it's happenstance that I found my profession.
Yeah, I grew up from the age of 2 wanting to be a headhunter. There was no doubt about it. Who would have thought? I wanted to be a pro hockey player. That's what I wanted to be.
Exactly. And we are still asking our kids. I mean, we're still saying, what do you want to be? What are you going to do? What are you going to, but
Well, we had I had this conversation with somebody else. We had guidance counselors that were nice people, but not really a clue. And oh, there's going to be a lot of accounting and engineering jobs coming up. You should go into that type of thing.
yeah,
So I did get my CPA because I didn't want to be a doctor of sciences and whatnot. So I did that, but I did it because I thought, I guess that's the best thing to give me a foundation for whatever else I'm going to do. But now there's a lot
sure
more.
it did. But it did.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? We work a lot, not to get too off track, but it's related to education. We work a lot with untapped talent, that don't necessarily have the regular education, which there's not a good or bad in this thing. There's other options in it, and it works.
I mean, we can talk about this a little bit later, but this is the point around schools of choice and charter schools in our country. We don't all, you asked the question, was I a reader? I am a reader, actually. And what derailed me, besides details in accounting, is the format in our universities is dominated by the lecture mode, and that's where you lose me. I mean, if you're a great lecturer, I'm all about it, but you're monotone, or I'm not into the subject, you lose me.
Yeah, yeah. There's the what's it called, the flip school or whatnot, where you do your homework in school, and
Yeah.
the other way around. And yeah, we had really quick. We had biochemistry teachers in high school, Mr. Stewart and Mr. Oh, I can't remember his last name. The other guy,
You
Mr.
probably see his face.
And Mr. Stewart and Mr. Robinson, and Robinson was the smart guy for sure. Mr.
Yeah.
Stewart knew his stuff, but he was so much more fun and interesting. We all wanted Mr. Stewart, so
Right.
that's what happens.
Exactly.
So we Fifth Element, we founded Fifth Element on the basis that leaders and businesses can do way better when they're doing good. Now, it looks like you clearly were an early believer of that in terms of supporting the financing of others who offer services to the public sector. Share with us how you arrived at the model that does create both economic impact as well as social impact.
Well, I don't feel that I can take any credit for being at the forefront of that model. But again, reflecting, I think I'm a grandmother of the industry, and there are great grandparents of the industry. So the industry itself is probably about 70 years old, and it's the stepchild to the muni bond or the treasury bill marketplace. Um, and it's just one of those things that as private individuals, you don't know it's happening, but it's happening all around you all the time, from your local park and rec district through the federal government agencies. And really started when universities were trying to acquire supercomputers. So traditionally, you had to go out for a bond, and to get a bond, you had to go ask your constituency to raise taxes, right? So universities and states were not successful. They had to find a workaround. So the industry is a workaround that has stuck, frankly. But I think what really hooked me about it, Mark, because again, it's financing, and while there's elements of it that have cutting edge and creativity, and it's certainly sophisticated structures, it it's done all day long, all the time. I think what actually hooked me, and to your point, is the humanity in the financing itself. And while on the surface it can just look like I can look like a banker almost. Early on, I had an experience where, as a very young person, I delivered the check, the payment, in exchange for a title of a rescue vehicle in Black Forest, Colorado. So it's a town in between Denver and Colorado Springs, and it's on a ridge, and it is a forest. It's a dense pine forest, and the fire department there is volunteer. And I was sent as the flunky rookie, go hand them the check and go get the title for the rescue vehicle. And my husband happened to go with me. It was like a Friday afternoon, and the entire town had turned out to take delivery of this rescue vehicle. It still gives me goosebumps,
Yeah.
because it was going to drop the response time to an average of 20 minutes from an average of 38 minutes. It was literally going to save lives for that community. And if I hadn't physically gone and seen the town turn out, I don't think I would have caught the humanity in that transaction. It was going to save lives. I've gotten to work on a million, projects like that where there's humanity involved. The other extreme is I was the financier on 200,000 square feet of office space at Edwards Air Force Base that turned out to be the design center of the stealth bomber.
Oh,
National security. And again, at the time we were doing it, the use of the building was top secret, but it later came out. It was Stealth Bombers Design Center. Okay, so there, again, I got to be this little teeny tiny sliver of our national defense. And so I can find a slice of humanity in every one of our transactions. And they're extremely broad. And so I think that I like numbers. I love the deal doing. I'm into negotiating. I love reading the room, but I also, we get to participate in things that make a difference.
Yeah, and that's the thing that keeps you going, right? I mean, everybody needs money for this, that, and the other, but where's that expression? If you won't work a day in your life if you love what you do.
Yeah, yeah. I need to send you. There's an essay called "Mastering the Art of Living,"
Oh,
and
sure.
the crux of it is, if you're lucky, an observer can't tell if you're playing or you're working. And I think that's, I have people who think all the time that I'm working. Nah, I'm at play.
Well, we spend so much time, right? And at it that I get a lot of people that say they love to work in a startup, and they're intelligent people, but they don't really understand what it's like to work in a startup. And you have to thrive in capital letters in that environment to make it, because you're not really working, you're
Right.
thriving in it. So no, that's actually fantastic. The fourth industrial revolution is all about tech, AI, VR, AR, this and that and the other. And now they're saying the fifth industrial revolution is about humanity, which is half the reason of our name, actually. Fifth Element Group is Sustainable Development Goal number 5. So your commitment to education from the financial and operations side, leadership, governance, fiscal responsibility, it offers, I'm going to quote, what clearly seems to be the most important. So, quote, the people in the processes to make your school thrive, there's that word, so that educators can educate. I find that so important. And this is a longer discussion about teachers should be paid way more and get great people teaching. I'll go offline a little bit. I have a friend who's the founder of a company called Humans to Venus, and it's about living up there. And the conversation is, if we were to start a community in a world like that, how would we structure it? What's the most important? Who's going to be there? Whatnot? And the two things that are most important are healthcare and education. Well, if that's the two things that are most important in a new community, why isn't it the most important here? Type of thing. So, with that said, elaborate on what you do with the people and the processes to allow that to happen, allow the educators to educate, and some of your experiences and accomplishments, and then what's next.
Thank you. Wow, that's a lot. um, uh, uh, Not surprisingly, or I guess often for entrepreneurs, we actually entered the education space. Education is a vertical market inside of the financial services that we're doing. We entered the space, frankly, through a challenge that presented itself then as an opportunity. You could make lemons out of lemonade. We came into possession of some operating contracts, and we decided we can do, let's give this a try. So when I moved into education, one thing I definitely like to point out, I'm not an educator. I don't want to be in the classroom. I'm afraid of the classroom.
I'm afraid of
Uh,
it.
we're focused on K-12. I'm totally afraid of the classroom. And so, really looking internally at, okay, what can we offer up? And besides financial services, because I guess maybe that you're making me think, Mark, we might have in a way shortchanged ourselves. That's so innate in what we do that we sort of felt like we had to do something besides that because we just do that. And so what we came to as a group, and what super appeals to me as the leader, is we can be a great employer. And we don't employ everybody that we manage, but we have management consulting contracts. And I felt like if you could clear the way, if you could clear the deck or the path or whatever, the metaphor is for teachers to just get to operate their classroom, that was how I personally and Tatanka as a company could contribute to advancing education. What I've learned is that's a piece of it. It's not all that. You need guardrails. People like guardrails. People often think they want total freedom, and then you get it and it's too much.
Right.
You want those guardrails. I'm also there, though, a fundamental believer in it's not about money. It's not that we're not spending enough money on education as a country. It's how we're spending the money on education. I'm going to put up the sign. I don't have the answer, listeners. There's a level of it being overwhelming, no doubt, but we spend so much money on management overhead and red tape, and we can pay our educators better if we slim down our administrations, and you can be sure that that's not a well-liked viewpoint.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's not liked by the administrators. It's not liked by the union bosses. I mean, just let's go down the list of admin that don't like that statement. But that's my reality.
You know, there used to be a program, MBO, Management by Objectives, where every year you had to prove what you need to do what you're supposed to do, and then the rest would be like what you'd like to have and whatnot. And it's not a crazy program because that gets it down to basics. You know, what are your goals and what do you need for it?
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily do that anymore, type of thing. I'm not sure why, but that's also, I think, what's happening right now is amazing. There's so much going on in education, different ways to educate. There's the homeschool. There's you know, what should have been taken advantage of for so long is vocational schools, education online, big time, and whatnot. Which I think is probably great because, like I said, we work with untapped talent, which is everything or everybody from formerly incarcerated to veterans to people who can't go to school. What's your thoughts on all that?
Oh, well, huge believer, and I think we're making progress. Again, for any of the listeners, any negative headline that you see about charter schools or schools of choice, I just ask you to dig deeper. Of course, in every, market, there are successes and there are failures and there are abuses. But in general, schools of choice provide competition in a public marketplace. And just to educate everyone, a charter school is a public school. It gets its money from the same place that the neighborhood school ultimately gets its money, and it has to meet the same criteria as of educating its students as the neighborhood school. And it's probably tougher and more demanding on its staff because it likely has the ability to dismiss people for non-performance. And we've all seen the inability of school districts to make personnel changes based on performance. So the nation, that when you see national negativity, it's driven by the teachers union and the desire to tamp down competition.
Yeah, that's not what we're supposed to do. So share with us how partnerships and collaboration, private public partnerships, multiple stakeholders, leaders of organizations, students, parents, and there's a lot of stakeholders going on there. How do you utilize that? How do you see they utilize that, they engage in that to make it both economically and socially viable and sustainable?
Well, I think as I thought about that question, Mark, for me, there's a lot of volunteerism that if we're talking about the education sector itself, a big piece of that across the board is people's willingness to jump in and volunteer. So, I think, again, we imagine all of these gigantic public-private partnerships, and yes, they're out there and they're great. But those resources aren't really available to the smaller school districts and to the individual community schools. So what we try to foster, and what I actually think for young professionals is just a huge opportunity, is volunteer, get yourself on a charter school board. It's the return on your time investment in understanding how the real world works, on testing your leadership skills. I think the return is frankly priceless. It's frankly the way I learned my leadership. I am a natural volunteer, and while I don't have that formal education, I have served on a wide variety of boards in a volunteer, not in a paid position, in a volunteered position, and that's really where I honed my craft. And I think so. Again, I think yes, we can see these gigantic public-private partnerships, but if we get down to the act locally, literally individuals can make a difference by calling people up and saying, hey, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to do something. It's huge. And again, the goosebumps. You and I met through YPO connections, and this is how we're gonna improve globally by acting locally.
Yeah,
Everybody listening has a chance to participate.
yeah, without a doubt. And those are our, not to be cute, those are our future leaders who care.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
see how what we're doing, how we're doing it, whatnot, and that models them. And I was an initial volunteer, I think at the age of 12, when my older cousin, who was a new teacher, recruited me to help her decorate the classroom.
Uh,
So
the tasks that are needed in a neighborhood school are gigantic.
yeah. And I was just with we're up in San Jose right now. I was just with some people who different diverse types of people, all different types of things. And one guy identified himself as, I'm a kindergarten teacher. And it was so cool to see that it's not somebody you see very often for some strange reason, and doing it for years and loving it. And although he says he's got 2 weeks till the summer vacation, which he's excited about, but what an impact they make. And we'll talk about influencers in a minute. But I think we've all had teachers that have made major impacts on us one way or another, like Mr. Holland's Opus, if you've ever seen that movie. And
Yeah.
they're so important. So I do have another question though. When we launched our company, we launched it at the UN headquarters, but it was on International Women's Day, which is the other half of the reason for our name, the fifth element. And so we engage with leaders who care about diversity and, more importantly, inclusion on everything that we do. Can you describe your journey as a woman in business, um, in the education sector? Although some people would think that's where most women went, that nursing or whatever. How you navigated, how you thrived, you know, how you engaged to get to a position of making a difference.
Well, so I'm going to qualify it a little bit because really my focus in education it's starting to be a while, but it's only been the last 8 years of my career, my long, long career. Um, Mark, interesting. For me personally, I think that I saw my adversity early on more from an age discrimination standpoint, if you will. And I don't use discrimination very often um, because I don't really feel that I was personally subjected to it, which is completely different than it being a reality. So, I want to way qualify that, but uh, I think I am part of a generation. Being the only woman in the room was just the way it was. There wasn't anything to think about. It's the way it was. And when I look back at times when I maybe didn't have a seat at the table, I think age played a big factor in that. Um, and then being a young woman, probably added on there. I did in part of my volunteerism, I've served as the chair of YPO's Women's Business Network, which is an international organization. And inside of that larger organization, our network had about 5,000 members. And I will tell you that I got a wake up call and an awareness that my personal experience, really wasn't the norm. Um, I'm a persevere though type of person. You drop out of school and then you keep going type thing. So I think in general, it's not stop. We haven't talked about this really, but also at heart, I'm a salesperson. The first there is no first no. There might be 15 no's, and then I might still redirect, but no is not a no for a very long time for me. And so I think that plays into just my own female experience. You redirect and come at it from a different way.
Yeah,
That
no, yeah, no is not now,
yeah,
basically.
I
Mhm.
know.
Um, that's what it is. Well, you should run for president. You'll be like a baby compared to the other ones. So,
No, there's still too much in the closet. I can't do it. We've all got the
oh yeah, everybody does. I know.
too
Well,
much in my closet's not very big, but I think there's still too much.
and that's unfortunately why people good people don't run. But
Uh,
well, in LA, we say, keep them wanting more so we can do the sequel. So we'll probably have to do more. But I have one last one. A
Sure.
client told me it was in 2021 at one point, about 2020, he said, the year 2020, it flew by slowly.
Oh,
What a
interesting.
brilliant line. And we've
Yeah.
probably gone through a lot that year, 21, 22, even blending together. With all that said, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Oh, wow. Um, well, I'm at an age, in my early 60s where I can truly look back at a career that's been had and a family that's been raised, and friendships that are decades long. So I would say that those are the three things that I'm the most grateful for. Again, uh, actually, I would say in the education space, I'm working in a way that I never worked in finance. Finance came easy and natural, and I got to play. I'm spending more time working than I ever have before, and it's not an hours thing; it's a brain power. Um, but I have the privilege to look back. I never knew I wanted to be an executive secretary to the president of a company because that person has a lot of influence. And so that was my target position, as a 22-year-old. Um,
Um,
Hopeful for, just, I mean, so many. We were talking before we started recording about the weight of the news and the challenges and all of that. Uh, I am a believer that generationally we are responsible and carrying a weight right now, but you can also go back and look at essays from every century where somebody thought the sky was falling too. And I just think that human ingenuity, um, and the general premise of people doing things for good. You can't be an entrepreneur for 30 years and not have people steal from you or a fraud perpetrated or something. But I've learned from those things that that is not what humanity is in general. Humanity is good.
and that's a perfect way to conclude. So I'm not going to add to that. I agree with you 100%. Well, thank you for being a leader who cares. We're thankful for that, and thank you for joining us. This was great.
I so appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to share, a little bit about what I do. So thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it.